Somewhere right now, a student is sitting in their dorm room dreaming about the future they'll create for themselves. A first-generation entrepreneur is pitching an idea to their best friend. A KU grad is about to make a decision that will change everything. We love the finished product, the launch, the headline, the reshaping of an industry, the exit. But what about everything that came before it? I'm your host, Jessica Palm, and this is KU Hustle. Today, we have a special episode recorded in front of a live audience of students, alumni, and Lawrence community members that brings a Kansas farm girl back to her first home on the Hill, the place where her incredible career traces its earliest roots. It's a story of how the values learned on a dairy farm translates to New York boardrooms and how friendships born from shared interests can transform into industry-dominating companies. A conversation about the intersection of entrepreneurship, motherhood, and life, the ups, the downs, and everything in between. This incredible conversation between Elyce Arons and KU School of Business Assistant Professor Elizabeth Embry dives into Elyce's deep friendship with Kate Spade. What started right here at KU eventually launched the well-known brand Kate Spade. Elyce discusses her education and Kansas work ethic and how it prepared her for life as an entrepreneur, how success requires risk, how reinvention and tenacity make entrepreneurs great, how relationships inspire her and drive the success of her newest company, Frances Valentine.
Welcome, officially.
Thank you. It's so nice to be home.
And in case you didn't catch that, Elyce was just named the 2025 Kansan of the Year. Which I want to, we won't make you recite the 4-H pledge, although I know you could do it by heart. But can you tell us how growing up on your family farm in Kansas laid the foundation for you to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I think growing up on a farm has its own set of challenges, but you never stop working 24/7. It's 365 days a year. It is all the time. If the cattle get out on the wheat, it doesn't matter what else is going on. You have to go get them off of the wheat. You have to feed them every single day. And my mother used to, on Christmas morning, we'd say, "Can't we just open our stockings and open some gifts before we go feed the cattle?" And she said, "They don't know it's your birthday, they don't know it's the weekend, and they don't know it's Christmas." So it was, you had responsibilities every single day. And I think that kind of laid the foundation in my life of hard work, which I know Kansans are known for, and just really set values that have always been in me.
And in addition to your family playing a very pivotal role in your life, your best friend Katie did as well.
Yes.
We heard already the reality that you two met your freshman year. What was it that made your friendship click and stick?
Well, firstly, thank you, KU, because if I hadn't met Katie here and we hadn't both gone here as students, Kate Spade and Frances Valentine never would have happened. So Katie and I met our first day of class. We were both at GSP. So her last name was B and mine was C, so we were 2 doors down from each other. I had just gotten back from a trip to New York, and I thought I was the coolest thing since sliced bread because I had on purple parachute pants. And it was the punk era, so I had on these green, like pointy-toed boots that were kind of slunched down, and I just thought I was the coolest thing in the world. And here comes Katie walking down the hall, and she's got on a polo shirt, a pair of khaki shorts, and Ouija loafers. And we both looked at each other, and we're like, oh my God, we're not going to be friends. So cut to... We were both journalism majors, so we started walking to class together. And, back then on the GSP floors, all the girls that were sort of like within a few doorways of each other, we went to the parties together. We did things together. And so we were sort of in the same pack that roamed the fraternity parties, et cetera. And I got to know her a little bit, and I found that she was the funniest person I had ever met in my life. And she remains that person today because she truly, although she was shy in her own right, she was incredibly clever. And she was also gracious and loyal, and we really clicked. And that summer, we kind of became like this after our freshman year, and knew that whatever we were going to do, we were going to do it together.
So, flash forward from freshman year all the way to New York City. Many adventures that hopefully you all will read in the story. You found Kate Spade as a brand. And here, when we teach entrepreneurship, we teach it through a lens of effectuation, which means starting with who am I, what do I know, who do I know? And you have an amazing effectuation story. Tell us about the first decision that you made to start Kate Spade and the first way that you started designing bags.
Okay. So while I have to add a little piece here because Katie's boyfriend, we left KU, unfortunately. I wish I could live two lives because I loved KU so much. But Katie's sister had invited us to come to Arizona for spring break. And we went, we had such a nice time. She gave us the red carpet treatment. She showed us all around and in fact showed us some really beautiful singles apartments, which were, really appealing to a 20-year-old at that point. At dinner that night at a fancy restaurant, she said, wouldn't it be great if you guys went to school here? And then next thing you know it, we're transferring to Arizona. And what we didn't think about was out-of-state tuition, so we had to get full-time jobs to go to school in Arizona. So we went to school 2 days a week and worked 5 days a week just to afford the fancy apartment and the out-of-state tuition. But one thing that did happen there was we met Andy and David Spade. And Andy then followed Katie to New York after we had both moved. And Andy is a brilliant advertiser. He's always been so good at branding and really thinking about things in a very different way than most people and kind of turning things upside down, which is what makes his ideas so unique. So Katie got a job at Mademoiselle magazine. I got a job in PR and marketing for a couple different fashion companies. And one night, it was about 7 years after we'd landed in New York and gotten a lot of experience in fashion, Katie and Andy called me with an idea. And Andy said, we want to start a handbag company. Will you join us? Will you come and do this with us? And I was like, handbags? What do we know about handbags? We didn't know anything. And he said, well, Katie knows what is not out in the market because she had been the accessories editor at Mademoiselle. And there really weren't any chic, simple American design bags that were available to women that were designer but accessible to most people. So Katie, in her apartment, again, neither one of us have design degrees, she cut out construction paper and taped it together, measured exactly the size she wanted, found a pattern maker, and had a pattern made for a handbag. And she did that with several different shapes, and then we found a sample maker and had them make samples. And at that time, we couldn't really buy materials from anybody. We couldn't afford leather, so that was off the table. But Katie called a company to order burlap from them, and they laughed at her because she just wanted some sample yardage of a couple, 20 yards, and they just laughed at her. So she called a potato sack company who was happy to send us potato sacks, and that's what we made our first burlap bags out of. And then, we were able to work with some companies to actually get some materials to make real handbags out of. But one night, before we did our very first show at the Javits Center, it's called the Accessory Circuit, we were looking at all the samples we had, and we had made men's shirting labels, like they go in the back of men's shirts. And we had put Katie's first name together and Andy's last name together to create this label. They were not married at the time. And because the name Kate Spade just sounded so good together. It could be your best friend. It could be, a woman detective or a spy or something. And it just sounded so good. We all loved it. And so the day before the show, we had sewn the labels in the inside of the bags as directed to our sample maker. And Katie's staring at all of them. She said, there's something missing. There needs somewhere for the eye to go when you're looking at this. So she pulled out one of the loose labels and held it up right underneath the lip of the bag. And we had to sew all those labels on the day before the show with really thick needles, and our hands were bleeding by the end of it. But that one decision changed a handbag into a brand. It was brilliant. And I think you'll all agree that that was a really good idea she had just in her apartment that night.
And so becomes a household name, becomes a mega brand, tons of hours, blood, sweat, tears, and lots of joy. What was your decision to eventually sell the company?
So we had owned the company for many years, and there were a lot of investment banks who were witnessing our success and kept contacting us to buy the company. And we weren't really interested in selling the business at that time. But our attorney, who was working in Boston, called us up and he said, Neiman Marcus is privately owned by this family, and they're really interested in putting together a couple of brands that they see a lot of potential in. And your name came up, and they're really interested in meeting you. So we flew up to Boston and met them. And their idea was, we want you guys to run the business, and we would like to supply the support to nurture this brand and really grow this brand so it can be, international and a really big brand worldwide. And we really liked them. They got it. They understood the brand. They loved the product, and it just felt right. So we, in 1999, sold 56% of our business to the Neiman Marcus Group. And they let us run the company. We made all the decisions. It just seemed kind of like it was before. And then over time, when there were some issues happening at Neiman Marcus, they didn't want us opening any more stores. And even though we were being successful, and we kind of started feeling the pressure more and more. And even though we really wanted to buy that 56% back, we couldn't really afford it. But we kept asking them, and they said, we're buyers, not sellers. We're not going to sell. We're buyers, not sellers. A few weeks after the last time we asked them, we opened Women's Wear Daily that day, and it says Neiman Marcus being sold to Warburg Pincus and Texas Pacific Group, which were two investment firms. And we're sort of like, okay, so these will be our new partners. Do we really want this? So we made the deal with Neiman Marcus to pull Kate Spade out and sell it separately to a different strategic. And that was Liz Claiborne. So 13 years after we'd started this business, we sold the entire company to Liz Claiborne in 2006. We stayed on an additional 6 months for the transition. It was all lovely and very easy, and we actually really liked the people who we were turning the reins over to. And what was the question? Because I probably didn't answer it. I could talk for like hours about this.
And that is fantastic. No, the question was about that.
Okay, so, we were all at a point where we were having children. I had just had my third child the day we closed the deal on selling the whole company. And it just felt like the time was right. We had nurtured this brand, and it kind of all felt like our first baby. And it felt like the right time to sell the business altogether. We were 4 partners with different goals in life, and our priorities had kind of shifted by that point. So we sold the business. We all took a trip to Cabo San Lucas, which was our favorite place together to celebrate in Mexico. And, it was a little bittersweet because we kind of knew we wouldn't be taking those trips together on business trips anymore. But it was also a big celebration because all of our children were with us, and it was really, really fun. And I knew when I got home that I would just be a full-time mom, and I loved it. It was so much fun. And Katie, volunteered at her daughter's school, running the school store and picking out all the items that they were going to sell. And I became the PA president at our school and the board chair at our school for many years. But we both missed fashion. And it was a wonderful period and a time in which we learned so much from being at our children's schools, but there also came a time when our kids didn't want us around the schools. And yeah, I'm sure you can all understand that. And we started talking about starting a new business together. And it was about 2013, 2014, and we're like, should we do this again? And we invited Andy and Pamela to get involved. They had both started their own businesses. So Andy agreed to help with the marketing. And Pamela said, good luck. I know you guys are going to do great. So Katie and I set off on this idea to start a new accessories business together, which was Frances Valentine.
And sadly, we lost Katie about a year into Frances Valentine. I'm going to ask you in a minute about her legacy, but I want to take a minute to acknowledge that if you or someone you know are suffering, there are not only national resources like the 988 hotline, but also here at the University of Kansas, we have our counseling and psychological services, our CAP Center, open not only for appointments from 9 to 5, but also for walk-ins at any point in time. And additionally, we've partnered with Mantra Health that is available 24/7 that you can call or text. And we have resources available. Thank you for being here. And I would encourage you all to take them with you as you leave today, in addition to the book and time with you. So want to recognize that that is a part of this story. And our biggest condolences from me personally, as well as from the University of Kansas, because I know that even though it was 7 years ago, not a day goes by that you don't feel her absence. What do you think is Katie's legacy, and how have you helped to ensure that we remember all the goodness that she brought to the world?
Well, I think the book is a really good start because there hasn't really been anything written about her aside from her leaving us. And I want people to know how she lived. As I mentioned, she was kind of a private person, but she was so gracious. She was so talented. And I think she brought joy to so many people. And I want to celebrate that. I want people to know how funny she was. And when you read the book, you'll see how funny she was. But with this book, I really want to not talk about how she left us, but how she lived, because I think that's the most important thing. And I think it's helped a lot of people with their grief. I know it helped me, but she just did so much for the world as far as bringing joy. And I, not only with the book, but to continue with Frances Valentine and spread joy with all of our products, because it's really about joyful products and wearing things that make you happy. I mean, you can't be sad when you're wearing this beautiful red dress.
Absolutely.
And just, just all of the personal details that we put into things, they are meant to be personal pieces, and we use vintage apparel, as I'm probably jumping into a question you're going to ask later, but we use vintage apparel as our inspiration because of all of the stories that the women who wore them have been through. And I love vintage clothing, but unfortunately you can't walk in and just pick out your size off a rack. Most vintage pieces are like a size 2 that none of us can wear. So I want to bring those silhouettes forward. And they're really classic pieces that are meant to stay in your closet forever. And bringing Katie's joyful spin on that, just with the florals that we use and the sense of bold color and all the things that we did at Kate Spade, and bringing it into Frances Valentine. Because at both companies, Katie's love was really designing accessories. At Kate Spade, it was handbags. And because we never did apparel at Kate Spade. I know a lot of people think we did, but we didn't own the company when they started doing apparel. We started doing apparel about 2 years after Katie left us. And the impetus to that was I wanted to really create a tribute to her and some of the things that she really loved. And so we pulled 2 vintage pieces. One was a caftan that she'd worn on every vacation we'd ever taken together. And the other was this vintage sweater that we'd bought thrifting decades before, that she wore all the time. There's probably a picture of her coming up in that sweater. So we remade those, and our customers loved it. It was really a tribute to Katie. We sold out immediately. We reordered it, sold out again and again and again. People started asking for all of the pieces we were using in our campaigns, which were the vintage pieces that Katie and I had collected for all those years. And that really was the inspiration behind what we make at Frances Valentine for apparel. They're pieces that are meant to live in your closet for your whole life. For today, when you look and you pick that favorite piece out, to 10 years from now, to 20 years from now. It never goes out of style because it was never on trend. It's never going to go off trend. But it's those really special pieces that we want to leave to our daughters at the same time. I'm going to be quiet so you can ask your next question because I keep talking.
Well, I'm actually wanting to, I know we have a lot of questions in the audience, but before we move to audience Q&A, I want to open this up because we do have students in the audience and aspiring entrepreneurs. One of the things that you say in your book, and I'm going to read it so that our students hear it loud and clear, because when I read it, I said, oh my goodness, this is a message that every single student that walks in my classroom needs to hear. You say, I wish I could give a giant hug and shout out to all the kids who work to pay their way through college, or any kid who works to support themselves. Often it's life without a safety net, and it's not easy. But they should know, and I can tell them from my fairly extensive work experience, that they are the special ones. They will be superstars. They are the ones who are never afraid to roll up their sleeves and make things happen. I know those were words that you wanted to say to students, but here's another opportunity. What other advice and wisdom would you like to share with our KU students?
Well, aside from working really hard, which anybody from who's worked in high school or college or had to pay their own way, you know how hard that is. And I hand it to you, really, honestly, because I know what that feels like. And I would probably say today, when you get that first job, take the receptionist job. Take the assistant job. Take the low man on the totem pole job at the company you really admire and you really want to work for, even if it's a small company, and better yet if it's a small company, because you'll learn every job that every person does at that business. Work really hard, show up before everybody else, make sure you're there before your boss, and leave after your boss. And make sure your desk area is tidy and clean. Like, do everything you can to make them think you're the superstar you are. Because, and I would also say, and I mentioned this earlier to a smaller group of students, when you're interviewing, wear a collared shirt, wear a jacket, brush your hair, put on makeup if you so desire, but look like you really respect and care about yourself. I interview people on Zoom sometimes, and I'm shocked. I really am shocked that they have on a T-shirt and their Zoom background isn't really thoughtful. And all that stuff matters because it's how you feel about yourself and how you respect yourself. And the more you think of yourself and the more you feel about yourself, it's going to show to everyone you work with.
Elyce, thank you so much for your time and being here. Thank you all. Please join me in one last KU thank you to Elyce.